Hi, my name is Steve James, and I'm 62 years old. We're here in Huntington, West Virginia. The first marathon I ran was in Fort Wayne, and it was in July with a friend of mine from Lilly. So I think it would have been 72, 73. It would have been a couple of years there where I was running both one marathon and the mini marathon in the same year. And we had these visions of grandeur that we were going to be able to run 3:30, 3:20, 3:15. And well, we got to the 18-mile marker and we started walking because we just didn't have anything left. And that was because we didn't pace ourselves. We ran the early miles too hard. And so then when you get to the point where you've used all that up, you haven't taught your body how to accept that kind of deprivation. The energy levels are gone. It's very easy to quit. It's pretty easy to quit. So that would have been the first one. I think the next few was one in Indianapolis and there was one in Lawrence, and they were all pretty local. And it was always the same. I always got 3:20, 3:17, 3:10, and it took a number of tries before I finally broke that 3 hour. I broke it 3 hours in D.C. in the marathon in Washington, D.C. And it was fun to be able to say, you get to that point in the race and at 20, 18, 20, and 21, and you're still enjoying it, then you know you've trained well enough. It's a combination of both speed and endurance, because if you don't push yourself in the long run when you're preparing to run the race, you can go a long way at a slow speed, but you'll never break 3 hours. And 3 hours is really sort of that point between being good and being great for average athletes. So by doing some sprints and then putting in, what I mean by sprints in a marathon, your marathon training would include running 1 mile intervals and 6 and 7 of them in a row, with maybe only 25 seconds between, where you'd be able to just catch your breath and then do it again. It's very, very difficult to do, especially the fifth and sixth ones are really hard. And they always would tell you, don't run as hard as you can because that's not good for you, but you run to push yourself, and it does incredible things to your speed. So you have to meld those two together. And that's really the key, is to pace yourself to your training so that you can finish just as you run out of energy. And it's hard to do because it's about a 3.5 hour, 4 hour, depending on how fast you race. So you've got to pace yourself, and you've got to make sure that you run your slowest miles in the early part of the race and your fastest in that 18 to 24, because that's the area where you'd normally slow down if you've run the first part too fast. There is the nutritional part of it as well, and so you've got to eat really well during this training period, and you've got to rest and take in the same kinds of foods after the race. So you've got to understand the nutrition, especially if you want to go and run 2 weeks afterwards. So it's real important. Food is very important to it. When I turned 50, I had a goal, when I turned 50, that I was going to run 6 marathons when I turned 50. The reason I picked 6 is because you prepare when I was 49, preparing in the fall, and then in January you're going to try to run the earliest marathon you can, and then you would run a marathon every 2 months. And that gives you 26 days to take off and then 26 days to prepare. And so that's how that quest came about in the 50s. And then by the time I got to the 6th race in that year, I was pretty much dead. And I noticed then that I was having some difficulty with my left knee. And after I would get down to races, it would make the damnedest noises, clicking noises, and it took a couple days for it to go away. But I still could run. One afternoon, I was digging in my garden, and I actually hyperextended my left leg, digging into the soft soil I thought was hard. I pressed down on the shovel and I hyperextended a little bit, and I didn't really think much of it. And continued to run, and I noticed that my knee was swelling after the run. So it didn't really hurt while I was running. It made me to the point where I really couldn't even walk straight or well balanced for a few days, so I was really only getting to run every 10 days or so. So I thought to myself, maybe if I take some more time off. So I took more time off, and so I didn't run much for those 2 years or 3 years or so. And so I'm getting into my later 50s, and I decided that I was going to have it looked at. And what had happened was the kneecap had splayed from side to side. It's kind of like a smashed apple where the skin is kind of splayed from side to side. Those particles of bone were rubbing up against the tendons in my knee, and they just clipped them off like a little haircut. And I ran a 10K race in Florida 3 weeks after surgery, and it did swell up, but it didn't hurt. And it took another year of recovery and training, and that would have led up to my overtraining for this race last year. So I really haven't finished a marathon in about 5 or 6 years. So I'm just excited about doing it. It's pretty unfortunate that I'm here this year because I trained for this race last year. I prepared so well that when I got here and started the race, I started to get leg cramps. I got my first leg cramp, it was my right leg, about 3 miles into this 26-mile race. And I told myself I could do it if I only have the one leg. I could do it. It was going to be hard. So at every rest stop, after the point where I started getting the first leg cramp, I started drinking as much Gatorade as I could. Gatorade's got some salt in it, and that's what I needed. But as I approached the Ritter Park, which is halfway through the double looping marathon course, my left leg started cramping. And I don't know if anybody has ever had leg cramps at night. These aren't the same kinds. The leg cramps at night are caused by kind of an involuntary response to stretching, and they are really, really painful. I know these leg cramps as you're running they hurt, but they feel a lot less hurtful if you slow down. So I was running very slow, and I wasn't enjoying it. I decided that I wasn't going to be able to finish. It would have been the first time ever entered a race where I wasn't going to be able to finish a marathon. And I got back to the hotel and cleaned up, and I vowed to come back, and here I am. You think about West Virginia, you think that this is going to be a very hilly course, and West Virginia, for the most part, is very hilly. But the town is really located along the Ohio River, and it's pretty flat. So we'll incorporate a little bit of a trip around the Marshall University football area, the area around the stadium, and then we'll go along the Ohio River for a few miles. You don't really get to see an unencumbered view of the river, but for maybe a mile or so, and then it works its way through the neighborhood, and it goes along a nice trail that leads along a small rivulet, a creek of sorts. And this is a very old town because it's along a riverway. This town's been here a long time, and the houses along this little trail are just really gorgeous, well maintained. Eventually goes to a park. We circle the park, come back out, and it's a pretty flat course. It's really you against the course and not anybody else, and to understand the pacing, and that's really, as many as I have run, I don't get it right every time. And it has a lot to do with preparation and your mental outlook about, oh yeah, I can do this, or you got to be reasonable about what you can do. And so I always sort of make an attempt to feel what I can and cannot do. And I know in the past I have virtually fell apart because I thought I was trained well enough, and I was not. And most of it is training, but some of it is pacing. And if you haven't trained really well, you just need to just not look at your watch and just enjoy it and let it happen. And it's really a lot more fun when you do that. The race is actually fun. The training is what's so hard because you're really forcing yourself each week to go further and further. And sometimes you don't feel the same way. You feel like you should feel the same way you did the last time, but you don't. You'll always feel simply just a little bit different. But the training is the hard hard element of it because of that. You are in my last 4 weeks, and as I've gotten older, I literally don't do anything 3 weeks coming to the marathon. So now I've gotten to enjoy all of my fruits of my preparation. So yeah, the race will be fun.
Getting Karen interested in running and how that came about.
I was just training for a little 10K, and all I was running long races. And she said, I want to run. But she goes, I just get tired. I get tired out. And I told her, I said, just run to the telephone pole and then walk to the next telephone pole. And she started doing it. That was really all she needed. And she saw me, and she wanted to participate. She went along with all these trips, so she saw the participation. She was very envious of the other people who were running. Plus, it was a great way to, to maintain your weight. So that's how she got started, really.
Doing great, Karen.
And she started running some 10s and 10Ks and she ran the mini, and she broke 2 hours in the mini, which was a fabulous time. I mean, that 15 years ago, that would have been what I would have been happy with. So I don't know if she prepared maybe as strenuously as I did, but I always told her that no matter how far you run in your training, if you have to walk a little, then you better prepare to walk a little in the marathon as well. And so she learned to accept that. She just wanted to enjoy it as a casual walk, run. Misery loves company in a marathon. I've been in marathons where there was only 100 guys, and you get strung out, and you really don't have any pacing assistance. You feel like, well, sometimes you might make a wrong turn, and I have in cases where we're small marathons, I made a wrong turn. They don't supply the water stops like a big marathon. I had done the Indianapolis Marathon a couple times, and I'd done a Louisville, and I'd done a Columbus, and so I was just sort of picking off these cities just because, not necessarily because I wanted to run one in every state, but the experience of running a different course. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be easier? Is it going to be harder? What kinds of people? You meet all kinds of interesting people, and I met an interesting fellow that was involved in the 50-state marathon club, and he got me interested in doing, and I was getting closer and closer to being retired, and I thought it would be a great way to see some of the United States, see different places. It gave Karen and I an opportunity to do maybe a 5 or 6 day vacation. I went to Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm not sure that I would ever have gone to Lincoln, Nebraska, and actually I really enjoyed it. It's a city that really is immersed in football, in their football team, and that's all they talk about. And it was one of the most gracious. They were one of the most gracious hosts of any marathon I've ever been to. I wish I could have stayed longer. That's usually the scenario. You get there and you wish you had more time, because you're thinking, I've gone to Colorado Springs, and I've gone to Santa Fe, New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and these places require a couple of days extra because you need acclimation to the altitude, and you're always thinking, gosh, I wish I had more time. Well, I realized that since I'm going to be in a position where I'll have some more time, it's been a few more days.
So what was the year you first ran the Boston Marathon?
1990 is, yeah, and I think my qualifying time put me in the, it would have been less than 3 hours. I think my qualifying time, I had to be under 255, and I think I ran it like a 251. Might have been a little bit, the qualifying time might not have been quite as fast as that, but I know that there was a period there between 28 and maybe 39 or 40 where I qualified every year, and that was when I was the fastest in that. But again, as I grew older, it also meant that my time, the qualifying times, also were slower. So it's still, for the time right now, my times now are still Boston qualifying. There, I'm still at the qualifying time there. So I learned my lesson about overtraining last year, and it got me. And I'm still looking in the back of my eye, around my shoulder, thinking that I still might do real well in my age group. If I happen to win in the top, land in the top 3, that's fine. I don't think it has a lot to do with the fact that I'm a great runner. I just think that running a marathon when you're 60 years old, 62 years old, it limits the numbers of people that can actually do it. So the people who I'm competing against every year are diminishing each year. So all I think that I have to do is just to maintain a healthy 9-minute pace, and I should have any trouble as long as I maintain my good joint health. I shouldn't have any trouble. It's difficult. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that don't run that it's it plays a toll on you physically. There is that physiological upflow of energy that you get once you're done, but you don't really ask a marathon runner if they're going to run another marathon at mile 23. It's not the question they want to hear.
From Colfax, Indiana, Stephen James.
So once you get done with the marathon, your psychological outlook is incredible. You just don't think the same way that you would think if you just were there for business. People will ask me, "Why do you run?" And I say, "I run because I want to, so I can stop." So, because when I stop, then I feel good.